Let's start with a small recap of what we've seen so far. To make our first sketch, first we need to open the program. Once the program is open, we must click the icon at the top left to open Clip Studio Pro. If you use Windows, there is a little trick to start Clip Studio Pro without going through the initial Clip Studio screen. Simply right-click on the program's icon in the taskbar and select Pin to Taskbar. This way, the drawing program will be pinned to the taskbar and you can start it directly from there. Once we have the program open, we're going to create a new canvas. To do this, we go to File and select New. Since we are only going to sketch, the technical specifications are not very important. So let's choose an A4 size and a resolution of 300 dpi, for example. When we have the canvas open, we need to make a decision. Are we going to trace the drawing directly over an existing image, or are we going to draw using an image only as reference? In my opinion, both options are valid, but if you have no experience with digital drawing, it might help to do this exercise by tracing directly over an image. This way, you can concentrate on the technical aspects of the process, and it can also serve as practice to work on the structure and proportions of the head that we looked at earlier. Additionally, the tracing exercise will allow us to introduce a couple of techniques and concepts in digital drawing that are crucial when working in this medium. To start, we're going to draw over a reference so you can learn all of the techniques without having to worry about the head structure, the proportions, or any other details. But don't worry, we'll draw a head freehand later in the course as well, so you can learn that process. This is just a good starting point. If we want to trace our drawing over a reference, the first thing we need to do is locate the reference. Thanks to the work we've done previously, I already have all my references located and organized in a PureRef file. As it's a program that I use very frequently, I have a shortcut to the program in my taskbar. That way, I just click on the icon to open the program. Once opened, I right-click and select the option Open to load my reference file. The next step is to select the image we want to use as reference and copy it using Ctrl+C or right-click, copy. As for the moment, I only want to use one reference. I no longer need the program open, so I close it by pressing Ctrl+Q or right-click Close. We go back to the Clip Studio program by clicking anywhere on the window and press Ctrl+V for right-click Paste to copy the image onto our canvas. It's likely that the image is not in the ideal position or the size we want. To adjust both the position and the size of the image, we can use the Transform tool. We can find this tool in the Edit menu up here. After, we select Transform, and lastly, we select Scale Rotate. It's pretty hidden, isn't it? It would be a bit cumbersome to have to go through these three menus every time we wanted to use the tool, but fortunately, we can use the shortcuts to make the work simpler and more efficient. Here, in the same menu, the program informs us that the shortcut assigned to this tool is Ctrl+T. Indeed, if we press Ctrl+T at any time, we can immediately activate this tool without needing to navigate through the menus. This is an extremely useful tool that we will use all the time, so I recommend getting used to using this shortcut, Ctrl+T, as soon as possible. Once we have the Transform tool active, we will see that 8 squares and a small cross appear on our image. This means that the Transform tool is active and we can start moving, scaling, and rotating our image. To move the image, just left-click anywhere within the rectangle delimited by the Transform tool and drag the image to the desired position. Once we have the image where we want it, we can use the white squares to change the size of the image. If we click and drag any of these squares, the image will expand or contract in the corresponding direction, but will always maintain the original proportions. That is, it will not distort. If we want to deform the image, we only need to hold down the Ctrl key while moving these squares. As we can see, This breaks the original proportions of the image and allows us to stretch, narrow, or distort the image. This is not very useful to us right now, but as we will see later, the ability to deform our images in this way can be very useful for making adjustments to our characters. With this tool, we can also rotate the image. To do this, we have to move the cursor around our image, and we will see that the cursor changes to a curved arrow with 2 points. Do you see it? Then, just click on any point on the canvas and drag the mouse in the direction we want to rotate the image. If we hold down the Shift key while doing this, we will lock the rotation to 45 degrees angles, which will allow us more precise rotations, but less flexibility. At any point in the process, we can press Ctrl-Z to undo the last change we made. The squares will disappear, confirming that the changes have been accepted and the transform tool has been deactivated. When we are satisfied with the new placement and dimensions of the image, we can press OK below the image or simply press Enter to accept the changes. The squares will disappear, confirming that the changes have been accepted and that the transform tool has been deactivated. Sometimes, if we are too close to the image and cannot see the entire canvas, it's difficult to know if the image is in the right place. For example, let's suppose I want to place this image more or less in the center of the canvas. Looking at my workspace, it seems that the image is in the center, but is it really? To check this, we can use the navigator view. The navigator is by default at the upper right, here. If for any reason you don't have the navigator activated, you can enable or disable it at any time in the Window menu, here. The navigator allows you to preview the entire canvas regardless of the zoom level of your workspace. Here, in the navigator, the red rectangle marks the area that I have active in my workspace. If we move the camera using the sliders at the edge of the workspace, or if we change the zoom level with the mouse wheel, we can see that the red rectangle adjusts to show the new workspace that we have in view. The usefulness of the navigator is that it lets us preview the complete version of our canvas and detect placement or composition errors. In this example, although the image seems centered in my workspace, it is not in relation to the global position on the canvas. To correct this, I can use the transform tool while looking at the navigator, or I can simply zoom out to ensure that I am taking the canvas and not the workspace as reference. At this stage of the process, in the sketching phase, this is not very important right now, but I believe it's interesting to get used to keeping an eye on the navigator so as not to lose sight of the overall composition of our illustrations. It's also very useful to be able to have a complete view of our drawing at hand every time we zoom in to work on some detail. At the end of this process, we already have our image placed in the center of the canvas, just as we wanted. Perhaps now is a good time to save our work in case we want to take a break or to prevent loss in case of an accident. Saving our work is simple. We just go to the File menu and select Save, or even better, use the shortcut Ctrl-S. In the window that opens, we choose the folder where we want to save the file and the name we want to give it. The native format of Clip Studio is the PODIT clip format, although it also allows working with other formats such as Photoshop's PSD. Generally, I always work exclusively with the Clip Studio format unless a client asks for the original files in PSD format, in which case I can easily convert them using this same menu. For now, I recommend that you use the Clip Studio format. Once we have chosen the folder, the file name, and the format, we can click on Save and return to our workspace. Now, the file name will appear at the top of the window, and from this moment on, each time we press Ctrl-S, we can quickly save our progress. It's advisable to develop the habit of pressing Ctrl S frequently, for example, each time we finish a set of operations. This way, we'll be saving our progress gradually and be prepared in case of any accident that forces us to close the program suddenly. Clip Studio is quite stable and hardly ever crashes, but file recovery is not one of the strong points of this program. So, to avoid tragedies, I recommend you develop the habit of saving your work at least once every 5 minutes. Upon completing this lesson, your workspace should look similar to mine. Your reference image in the center and the name of your file at the top. Additionally, if you look at the lower right part of the screen, you will see that the reference image now appears in a thumbnail version under the name Layer 2, but what is a layer? The concept of a layer and working in layers is one of the fundamental concepts in digital art and one of the main differences and advantages, in my opinion, of working digitally as opposed to traditional formats. In the next lesson, we will learn what layers are, how they work, and how we can use them in our character creation process. Choose the head you want to use as a reference and use the tools we've learned in this video to place it on your canvas, adjusting its size and position. You can opt for one of the heads you have selected and saved in PureRef, or you can use some of the heads I have included as downloadable material in this course.